Hello, and welcome to School Day at NTTBF, hosted by the Library Science Program at Sam Houston State University's College of Education. I'm Milissa Vo, a librarian at Capel Middle School East and a proud SHSU alum. Today, I'm so honored to moderate the Game Changers panel. Welcome authors James Ponti, Dwayne Reed, Kelly Yang, and Lisa Yee. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you? It's so great to be here.
Good. If you would please introduce yourselves and tell about your latest book. And Lisa, let's start with you.
Usually it's alphabetical the other way. I'm Lisa Yee. My latest book is Maisie Chan's Last Chance. It's about a girl from Los Angeles who ends up in Last Chance, Minnesota, where she's visiting her grandparents. Her grandfather has become very sick. She's only met her grandparents once before, and they own a Chinese restaurant called the Golden Palace. And when Maisie gets there, she thinks it's going to be just this horrible, boring summer. But she learns that there are so many secrets that are happening in that town. And like, for example, when she goes into the back of the restaurant, she sees a wall and there are all these black and white photos of young Chinese men, but nobody will tell her what's going on. The more questions she asks, the more questions she has. And then when the restaurant is targeted with some hate crimes, Maisie decides that she's going to solve the mystery of what happened and why. And simultaneously, her grandfather starts telling her stories about her great-great-grandfather, Lucky Chan, who came over to America when he was just a teenager, well over 100 years ago in the 1850s. So she learns about her past while she's seeking out her present.
Another great Lisa Yee book, of course. They all are brilliant.
Thank you, James.
Dwayne, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yes, of course. What's up, y'all? My name is Dwayne Reed. I'm from Chicago. My book, Simon B. Ryman Takes a Stand, is the second book in the Simon B. Ryman series. It's about a shy fifth grade boy who has a lot of insecurities. He's small for his age, but he dreams about being a big Chi-Town rapper like Kanye West or Chance the Rapper. In this book, Simon B. Ryman Takes a Stand, Simon and his two best friends, CJ and Maria, learn what activism means when the funding for one of Maria's favorite after-school programs gets cut. The kids start a petition, and Simon musters up the courage to take center stage in his community. So there's a whole lot of fun. There's a whole lot of rapping and rhyming, a whole lot of community, and just kids being kids. Simon B. Ryman Takes a Stand.
Thank you. Kelly, would you like to go next?
Yes, hi, I'm Kelly Yang. I'm the author of the Front Desk series, and I am here to talk about my newest book, New From Here. It is about a family that immigrates from Hong Kong to the United States at the beginning of the pandemic, which very much happened to me. I found myself taking my three kids to the US and being an immigrant all over again. And of course, things are very different because the pandemic, we've got surges of, fear and sometimes a little bit of, hostility, especially towards Asian Americans. But the protagonist in the story is 10-year-old Knox, and he is in a very hilarious and rambunctious kid. He's been struggling a little bit with his blurting things out problem. So he has ADHD. But as the story evolves, he actually kind of learns that, because he has his ADHD, it actually catapults him into action. Because one of the things that is a huge problem in his life is that his dad had to stay behind in Hong Kong. So they are a family navigating the pandemic, even though they're oceans apart. And of course, he cooks up this hilarious plan to reunite the family. So super excited to talk to you guys.
James.
Yes, so my newest book is called City Spies Forbidden City. It is the third book in the City Spies series, and the series is about a group of 5 kids who've all fallen through the cracks of their different cultures, and one by one they've been discovered by this British secret agent who can't turn his back on them, so winds up adopting them. And so they become a family of spies. He raised them as spies because that's what he knows, and MI6 uses them for missions where adults would stand out. So there's this team of spies, which really, to me, is a story about this found family coming together. And the spying is all the fun and the adventure, but really it's about 5 kids who work together and what it makes to be a family. In the first book, they went to Paris. In the second book, San Francisco. And in this book, we have big storylines that go from London to Moscow to Beijing. There is a boy band, billionaire who may be a bad guy, and international chess tournament. So there's a lot of fun, a lot of different storylines going for all the characters, and yeah, it just came out a few weeks ago, and really excited to. And as soon as this session is done, I go back to writing book 4. So this is nice to have a break from writing spy missions. Yeah.
Great. Well, all the characters in your books all make a difference in both small and large ways in their world. What do you think is one of your main characters or your main character's greatest strength? So we're going to start off with Lisa again on this one. What do you think? I'm just switching it up today. What is Maisie's greatest strength, do you think, in your book?
I think Maisie's greatest strength is her curiosity. She's not afraid to ask questions, and she's not exactly a rule follower. So she will go places and ask people things that that normally you wouldn't do. And although she is an introvert, and I kind of like had her be sort of like me, like I'm an extroverted introvert. And so Maisie is the same way. She likes to be by herself. She likes to read, but when push comes to shove and she needs to get out there, that's what she does.
Okay. Dwayne, what is Simon's greatest strength?
Simon's greatest strength is that he's a connector. So similar to Maisie, he's really introverted himself, though, but he has this ability to connect friends on the playground, to connect the older adults in the community, to connect with his teachers and older members of his family, and to bring them all together. And I think that strength, that superpower, if you will, is something that's much needed, especially now as we're going through so much in our world. We need to be brought together. And Simon does a great job of bringing everybody together in his kind of quirky little notorious DOG way.
Right. Kelly, what do you think about Knox's greatest strength?
So I think Knox, his best strength, his biggest strength is probably just that he has an incredible amount of empathy. He really sees people, even though people don't always see him. And a lot of times people see him and they just see his, impulsivity, and they kind of stop there. But he has so much underneath that and so much to give. And he really sees people and he sees what they're going through. And so one of the things that ends up happening is, at the beginning of the story, he and his older brother are kind of growing apart. And this is something that I witnessed with my own kids. I have 3 kids, and they're very much the kids in the story. And it's terrifying when your older sibling starts growing apart from you. You're just like, what happened? They used to be my best friend, and now I'm not cool anymore. And he, normally I think a lot of times you just think there's nothing you can do, but Knox just keeps trying, and he keeps trying, and he eventually sees what his brother's going through. And I think his incredible empathy for people, all people, even people who weren't very nice to him, is what sets him apart.
Great. James, I know you have multiple characters there in City Spy, so if you just want to choose 1 or 2.
Well, people sometimes ask, why do you want to write spies and kids? Because they seem like incongruous, but in reality, to me, spying is most like I felt as a middle schooler. I was trying to blend in. I was trying to study and gather intelligence so maybe I could go unnoticed through the world. Maybe I could figure out the code these people are using, sometimes even trying different identities, right? And so to me, spying is like a hyper projection of the anxieties of that age. And one of the great things about it is if you study real spies through history, unlike the James Bonds of the world, which are great fun to watch, but they're not action heroes in tuxedos. They are often marginalized people who are overlooked, people who the reason they are overlooked in everyday life makes them excellent spies. And I thought kids have that. Kids are overlooked and underestimated all the time. So for me, their greatest strength is their self-reliance, but also what I really try to play with is the trust that they develop with each other. The fact that the one thing that they had never had before this was really a sibling, a family that they could rely on no matter what. And I think that's their greatest strength because, they are solving problems not with superpowers, they're solving problems with brain power and emotion and empathy. And so trying those family emotions in there, that's always what I'm going to go for, not this one's really good at at martial arts, or this one's really good at climbing things. No, I really want to, this one really will not leave until the other one is safe and sound. That's their strength to me.
So it's like that emotional strength, like that emotional
Right.
strength.
And then the spy stuff is just fun. Once you have that, then it's just an excuse to put it all onto display and into action.
Fantastic. Thank you. Dwayne, your videos have gone viral with millions of views, and they were amazing. You've incorporated your talent for writing lyrics into your books. So both rap songs and books tell stories. How do you approach writing a rap versus writing a book?
Yeah, great question. And if you haven't, go check out Welcome to the Fourth Grade, which was the first viral video that came out about 4 or 5 years ago. But man, rap is fast, and it's all about brevity, right? It's all about using a few words to try to like capture in an emotion or capture an idea, and also capture the heart of, the person who's right there listening to those raps. But working on a book, it's like taking a long exhale. You have the time and the space to really work through a much larger story with your readers. So there's definitely differences. But when I'm spitting that rap, or when Simon is spitting those raps, he understands that I've got to catch you real quick, and I've got to make you believe in what it is that I'm saying. Lickety split. See, I just did a Simon rhyme. But I have to draw you in immediately. But whereas with a book, I got some time. We can work. We can slow cook this thing. And yeah, I got you, and I'm going to keep you to the end.
One of the things that I think is great about what you're rapping and you're writing is that, yeah, we have a lot more space on a page and a lot more space in a book. But I feel like the best books use few words to get a lot of emotion. They really involve the reader, and I think you do a great job of that. And that's why I think it's such a natural transition. And yes, if you guys haven't seen Welcome to the Fourth Grade, you are totally missing out. I watch it at least once a month to cheer myself up from the world outside my window, which is not always the cheeriest world it seems lately.
Thanks, James. Thank you.
Lisa, your book has a lot of similarities to your life and experiences. Tell us about what you were like when you were a kid.
Oh, when I was Maisie's age, I kind of thought of myself as pretty invisible. I mean, but I was growing up in Los Angeles, and so there wasn't or I didn't feel a lot of racism because there were so many different kinds of people here. And so growing up, I thought I was just like this normal kid watching the Brady Bunch and everything like that. And it wasn't until I was actually a little bit older and I moved to a place where I was the only Asian around that I started thinking, oh my gosh, why is everybody telling me that I speak English so well? And, it was like things like that I actually worked into the book. It was kind of an awakening when you get out of your bubble. And that's what happened to me. And that's what happens to Maisie.
Great. Thank you. James, you kind of touched on this earlier, but you choose settings from all around the world. Your latest book, they're in three new cities. How do you choose what cities to write about when there's just so many options out there?
I am trying to find cities that instantly evoke concepts for kids and connections for kids. Like, I've heard of that. I really like cities with great architecture and great history that I can then use. I do tons of research. Up until COVID, I always go to the places and really walk around them and study them all. So I try to mix it up. We do a different continent each book. So we just Asia now. So the next one's going to be Cairo, and then we're trying to mix it up because we really want it to feel global. And actually, the first thing we do, I get on with my my editor, and I go over, these are the 3 cities I'm thinking. Let's talk about where they could be. But it's, as I was a very reluctant reader growing up. I really struggled with reading. I am always writing with the idea of what would have caught my attention when I was that age. And so I want to go on the trip that I think the readers want to go on. And I try, and it's, I produced television for a long time, and I do travel shows, and I would try to do the same thing. It's like, well, where do you want to go? Because if it's where you want to go, the odds are it's where other people want to go, and we can build it out backwards that way. So looking just for great and cities with truly unique character that, it only could, there's certain things in Moscow can only happen there. Prague would be different and Budapest would be different, but you really want that. So that's what I'm looking for, kind of where, and, of course, always, like we really want to go to Rome. So I imagine we'll be in Rome. So my wife and I can go research, so something like that.
I love that. Thank you. Kelly, your newest novel is set during the beginning of the pandemic. What do you hope readers of this book will take away from the story, and why do you think it's important?
It was so interesting because when I first started writing it, I wrote it because of what happened to us. We thought that we would be fleeing this situation. There's no way it would come here. And then just the torrent of emotions getting on that flight that day with my kids by myself. Like now I'm looking at single parenting 3 kids in a pandemic. I thought that those were unique emotions that I had. But what happened recently was I started reading the first chapter of New From Here on YouTube Live for World Read Aloud Day. And I started getting flooded with emails from kids, telling me what the last couple of years have been like for them. And so I thought, what, this is my pandemic story, but we all have a pandemic story. And I really believe that every kid has been the star of their own gripping novel for the last couple of years. So I started a contest. I said, what, go ahead, guys, write your own pandemic stories and email them to me. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many we've gotten. And we're trying to get them up on my website as quickly as we can. I think as of last night, we have like 60 up on my website. And just reading them has been incredible. And it just made me realize that, these kids have been going through so much these last couple of years, the pain of having sports seasons canceled, of having to skip a birthday, of not knowing if they were going to have enough toilet paper. And those are a lot of the emotions that I put into this book. So my biggest hope is that kids, when they're reading it, realize that they weren't alone. This was something that we were all going through. And collectively, all of our stories, that's what makes up our collective experience.
Fantastic. Dwayne, use your voice. It's not a choice is one of the main messages in your book. So Simon uses his voice in the book. How are you wanting your book to impact readers with this message?
Yeah, so when I was a child, when I was Simon's age, I was super shy. I was really short for my age compared to my peers. I had a really big head. I still have a really big head, just a little bit taller right now. But I remember having so much on my mind, but I didn't feel comfortable letting it out because I felt like, oh no, people are going to judge me based on the way I look. They're not going to hear what I'm trying to say. They're going to laugh at me, etc. And that's a lot of what Simon feels. He feels so insecure. He feels like I have such great and grandiose and significant ideas, but I don't know if anyone's going to hear me. But my hope is that with this book, Simon B. Ryman Takes a Stand, that it'll help kids realize that their voice, their opinions, their feelings are important. They mean something, and that there's room for everybody in this world to communicate. Like there's space for you to say, as we'll say here on the west side of Chicago, there's space for you to get yours off. Like there's safe for you to say whatever you feel like you need to communicate and get that out into the world. A character like Simon, who sometimes lays low, reminds us that you don't have to have the loudest voice or be the most outspoken person in the room in order to be heard.
So true. Thank you. Kelly, what do you think readers will relate to the most about the family dynamics in your book and about how each member dealt with the obstacles in your book? Because I know everybody's family is a little bit different, but in your book specifically.
I think people hopefully will recognize, that it was a lot to be on lockdown with your family for so long. It wasn't easy. And I know that for a fact because I've been getting a lot of stories from kids. Not always the best feeling to be on lockdown with your siblings. There's some really hilarious moments in the book, but it was also a time for the family to bond, and as I was saying, like in the beginning, they were starting to grow apart. But if there's anything that makes you look and examine your own family, it's being stuck in the house with them for, months on end. And I really want kids to, hopefully they'll recognize some of those dynamics, some of that uncomfortableness, but also some of that comfortableness of feeling like, I'm part of this family, but I don't really know my place yet, but I'm figuring that out, and that's okay.
Great. James, in addition to adventure and mystery, you really focus on friendships. I know you kind of touched on the family part in City Spies. And I thought this was a great question, because what qualities do you think are important when making friends? And, in middle school and upper elementary and high school, friendships are so important. So what qualities do you think are important?
Well, I know that Dwayne is new to parenting, but having seen it, live through it, and then watch your kids go through it, it really kind of skewers your view on parenting and on friendship. And the hardest thing, I think, is thinking people are your friends, but you're not sure that they are. Mm-hmm. And trying to, the shibboleth or whatever version of how you show that, yes, I'm a real friend or I'm not. And in my books, I really try to deal with just the concept of it. And for me, I think the ultimate sign of friendship is I accept you exactly as who you are, and you can always count on me. And those two things, everything else falls into place. And without those things, inevitably you're going to run into issues. Now, what I also think is important, and again, I have this dynamic now here with 5 kids in the series, is it can't be always happy-go-lucky and, oh, we're friendly, we're not that way. We argue and we get in disagreements, and we have micro hurts that we don't share, and we have bigger slights that we feel we write into bigger things. And I try to touch on those things, and we really have, I feel like the stories are at their best if in the middle of the spy mission, there's this explosion about, well, you did this and you did that. You left the plastic explosives out and I got in trouble for it, or whatever it might be. Earlier, Lisa mentioned watching Brady Bunch as a kid. I actually had trouble watching Brady Bunch as a kid because they would always do something bad. And every episode, one of them would do something bad, and I would have to run out of the room because I couldn't handle the pressure of the conflict that was coming. So I think I was a conflict averse kid who is now looking for trying to help kids figure out, no, you can work through conflict and it's okay.
I think that's great. Lisa, in your book, Maisie learns about her family history through stories. Why do you think it's valuable to learn about family history?
Oh, I just think it's so amazing if you can do that. Growing up, I didn't know a lot about my own family history. And every now and then my mother would start telling me stories about her childhood, and I would be like, it's boring. I don't want to hear, But when I started researching this book, it's like your family and the history inform who you are today. And for Maisie, when she finds out about her great-great-grandfather and the things that he did, he worked on the railroads, he worked as an assistant chef in a mansion, he was accused of a crime he didn't commit, and he flees and ends up in Last Chance, Minnesota. Those are the kinds of stories that ground us. And so when writing this book, I was talking to my parents and finding out more and more. And I was talking to some of my cousins, and they're like, I didn't know that happened. And we didn't know that happened, because I think that for a lot of Chinese families, sometimes we don't talk about things. And so to be able to find out about these things and think, okay, well, this is why I am the way I am, or this is why my parents did this or that, or this is why I'm here today, is so important.
Well, some of the next questions I'm going to share are from students. So Kelly Elizabeth from CMS East asked, how much of your time is spent writing your books each day?
It depends on the day. Like right now, I'm just trying to get through all these student submissions for this contest. But I would say I try to write for most of the day. I usually start around 10 or so, and then I'll work through lunch and grab a bite, and then probably write until 3 or 4 if I'm lucky. But then my kids come home, so.
And then it stops.
Yes.
James, Sonia from Jasper High School asks, how do you come up with the names for your characters?
Oh, there's a lot of fun ways. So in City Spies specifically, I was at Dead Poets Society with my mom way back when that movie came out, which is before the time of anyone watching. But basically, it was a movie where there were 6 main characters, all of whom had the same haircut and wore the same school uniform. And halfway through the movie, my mom turned to me and she said, "I can't tell who's who." And it really struck me as like, that's a terrible thing to be in when you're a reader or a viewer, when you're having trouble. So for this book, my idea from the beginning was every kid is going to be from a different city, obviously a different part of the world, and they are going to keep with them. The one thing they keep from their past is they erase their past, is their code name will be the city they're from. That way, when you're reading it and you read Paris, you're instantly reminded he's the one from France, and your mind fills in the gap. And so that was how I named them. I came up with a list of like 50 cities around the world that I thought were good character names, and looked at it for a couple days, and then picked my favorites. A lot of friends and editors and agents and things, they get their names for secondary characters. But I have 2 tricks that I like to share for anyone doing this. If you go to the Social Security website, you can type in any year, and it will give you the top 500 names of children born in this country that year. And I usually will skip the first 100, and I'll start at 101, and I'll look for a name that strikes me but isn't too common. But I write international, my characters are going all over the place. And so whenever I'm writing international characters, I pull up the men's and women's national soccer teams, and I read their rosters and pick out first and last names. I don't use anyone all the way across because I don't want to use someone's real name that I don't know, but I'll pick like this person's first name and this person's last name, and make sure I'm not like crossing in some places that could be like a religious thing that those names would never go together, but try to find names that sound good together. So Social Security, friends, national soccer teams. Those are my 3 tricks for naming characters.
Thank you.
Amazing. I want to remember that.
It is every country has a men's and women's team with at least 40 people on the roster. So you've got realistic names.
I usually just go to baby names, and then I get like a million, like, are you going to have a baby ads?
Yes. That's a thing that I bet readers have no idea about, is when you research stuff, the logarithms out there, algorithms or whatever, start sending you the strangest advertisement. And when you research like how to build bombs, how to blow up this bridge, or this kind of stuff, you get really scary ones. Yeah.
You're on a list.
Yeah, I think I might well be on a list.
Okay. So wait, Molly from Jasper High asks, how do you, as an adult, find inspiration for writing stories from the perspective of tweens and teens?
That's a great question. I'm around tweens and teens dang near 24/7. So I get to be inside their mind all day, every day. Sometimes I don't want to be there. I'm forced to be there, but they take me there. And then sometimes it just, man, I truly believe that kids are our funny future. And I say funny because every single day I'm laughing at something that a kid has said in passing, said to another one of their peers, says to me. But they're definitely our future in that, we are in good hands with the children, the young people that are coming up now. So, man, that's where I get my inspiration. That's where I get my go-to. And I will never run out of content because kids are always going to be dope, awesome kids.
Great. Lisa, Alani from Lady Bird Johnson Middle School says, if you could be in one of your books, which one would you be in and why?
Oh, okay. If I could be in any one of my books, well, okay. So, like James is talking about research and going to places and everything. I wrote a book that was set in the Amazon rainforest, and it was for American Girl, but I went there to research, and I hung out with baby sloth who I fell in love with. I love sloths. So I would go back there and I would reunite with this baby sloth that I met, and we would be best friends forever.
Not Superhero High?
No, that was actually for
No, but I mean, you wouldn't go back, you wouldn't pick one of those and be a superhero. That's interesting.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay,
Sloth
no,
over
this is great.
superhero.
I'm going to change my answer. Okay, I'm going to go back to superhero high now, and I'm going to be a
Sloth girl.
superhero. What's that?
Sloth girl can be your superhero. You can,
Sloth girl. So my power would be that I go slower than everybody else, and it just freaks me out.
I love that. It would be very unexpected, very unexpected.
that's brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you. James, Sam from Jasper High School, how did you come up with the idea for City Spies? And you did kind of speak to this in the beginning. Will there be more books in the series? You said you are working on the next book, so that's exciting.
Yeah, we're going at least to 6. I think 7 or 8 is probably where we'll end up. So I wrote a series called Framed about a boy named Florian Bates and his best friend Margaret, and they solved mysteries using this technique they developed called the theory of all small things or toast. And I finished the second book in the series, or the first draft of it, but I finished the second book on a Friday afternoon, emailed it to my editor, finished packing, hopped on a plane, flew to London, and within 24 hours, I was at Buckingham Palace with my son and my wife, because my son was going to school in England that year and we wanted to go visit him. It was my wife's spring break. She's a school teacher. So we can't stop writing. And I just finished a book and I couldn't change anything in that book until I heard back from my editor. So even though I hadn't slept in days and even though I was jet lagged or whatever, I'm standing there at Buckingham Palace and I thought, this would make a great place for the next book. I'll have Florian and Margaret come to London. And then I came up with this whole plot about the Sherlock Society and Sherlock Holmes Museum. And then 3 days later, we were at in Paris, and we're in front of the Eiffel Tower. And I go, "Oh, this is great too! I'll have them come to London and Paris." And I actually, going back to Brady Bunch, which seems to be a touchstone in this, I thought, "Wait a minute! You're writing like the episode of the Brady Bunch where they go to the Grand Canyon or Hawaii. Like you're already like in the third book, giving up on the setting and having them." I go, "No, you need a different book that takes place in these great cities with these big backdrops in the front." And so a week after we got back from the trip, we went to the mall. You enter through the bookstore. My wife was going to Macy's, and I did not want to hold her purse outside the dressing room. So I said, "I'm just going to stay here in the bookstore and come up with a new book series." I said it kind of as a joke. And my wife said, "Why?" I said, "Well, we just went to Europe, and we have to pay for it now, so I need to earn some extra money." And I stood there, and I looked at the kids section, and I asked myself, what's missing? And I stood there for like 10 minutes just staring. And when she came back, she goes, "Do you have the idea?" And I said, "Actually, I do." And I pitched her the idea for City Spies, and it's all, even the title. And it was lucky that it came that way, but it was all from, again, the excitement of, if I'm having this much fun going to London and then going to Paris, readers would have that much fun, right? And that was what I was going for.
That's awesome.
Yay.
And I didn't have to hold a purse. So
Yeah.
and my account let me deduct the trip on our taxes, but that's it.
Bring that up. Yes, all tax deductible.
No, because it was a research trip now. Yes.
Okay. Dwayne, Ray from Pearson Middle School asks, how long does it normally take you to write a book? And how can you describe how you would feel once you complete it?
Yeah, so my co-writer and we worked on this particular manuscript for Simon B. Ryman Takes a Stand. So it takes around 6 to 8 months. And then once you finish it, you feel excited, elated. You feel, one of the words my kids use is nerve-sighted. So like you're nervous and you're excited. So the excited comes from, oh my goodness, this is done. The nervousness comes from, how are people going to respond to this? Are they going to like it? Is my mama going to like it? Or is she going to be like, yeah, babe, not your best? So I would definitely say nerve-sighted. As a content creator, as many of, young people are delving into content creation, you've got this kind of always lingering feeling of, is this going to hit? Is this going to be the thing? Is this going to be something that attracts more attention and gets people loving that which I've put my heart into? And that's what it's like, as everyone else here will know, that's what it's like completing a book. Like, I love this. I'm happy about this. I want to share this with the world. How is the world going to respond to what I just put, my heart and soul into? So nerve-sighted would be the word.
I totally relate to that. I am like super nerve-sighted.
It's all the time. in film school, I went to college, I majored in film, and we had to, so I'm so old, there was no video, we shot on film. And there was a 3-day period from when you turned the negative in until you got the print back. And you couldn't see it, you didn't know if it turned out. And we didn't have that, I wish we had that word, because that word would have been perfect. We just called it the latent image blues, and we would just sit around going, I hope I shot everything I was supposed to, I hope it's not awful, I hope it's not terrible. And it was the worst 3 days every cycle through.
Mhm.
Kelly Ashita from CMS East is asking, what do you do when you get writer's block?
So I am a big believer in planning. So and not every author has to plan, and I like bow down to you guys who are pantsers, but I am not a pantser. I am definitely a plotter. I love to outline, and I find that when you have a plan, you are a lot less likely to get writer's block. You're a lot less likely to get lost. And I always tell kids, it's kind of like going into a forest with a map. If you have a map, you know kind of how to get out, right? But that said, it is hard work planning, and I know that it's not as fun as writing, but I really encourage you guys to embrace it.
Great. So we are running out of time. I'm going to attempt to do a very quick lightning round. So I'm going to try, let's see what we can get done. So I'll call your name so we can kind of keep track of that. But what is the one thing you are afraid of, Kelly?
Spiders.
Dwayne?
Not maximizing my potential. I want to be great at everything.
I love
James.
that.
James, sorry.
Mayonnaise. I'm terrified of mayonnaise. It's a long story, not for rapid line, but I have good reasons. So terrified of mayonnaise.
Lisa?
Frogs. Mayonnaise and frogs. Those are the two things. Yeah.
I was gonna say mayonnaise also.
Oh, that's it.
If there's like a drop of mayonnaise in a food, I was
I can't get near it. And like I'll ask the server, I go, is there mayonnaise in it? And they always say, oh, I don't think so. I go,
and then,
I don't think so. It's not a good enough answer. And they'll come back and say, well, it turns out. I go, yeah, no, creamy.
That's so funny. See, my thing is cheese. I can only eat cheese if it's melted, but if it's not melted, I don't like it.
There you go. That's a. I understand that.
Do you understand that? Because
I totally
what is wrong with you? Like, I just want it to be hot.
Yeah.
Well, so we end on a positive thing with the food. Our students love to eat and snack. So what is your favorite snack? So we'll go to stuff that you love. James?
My favorite snack. Oh my goodness. I am a sucker for crackers. Because crackers, you don't mess up the typing. You can eat a cracker nervously and go there.
Okay, Kelly?
Chocolate. I am a huge chocolate. It's a chocolate eater, lover, all that. It's embarrassing how much chocolate I have in my fridge. And I know, Lisa, you are a huge candy eater.
I am. C's Chocolates named me the fan of the year. They sent me boxes of chocolates.
That's, for those that don't know, C's is amazingly good chocolate.
West Coast chocolate.
Sorry, Lisa, is that your favorite snack, would you say?
Well, chocolate's my favorite food, but I would say that snacky would be jalapeno chips, because you could and what I have to do is then I put a clamp on them and I throw them across the room, the bag. So, I mean, I have to do that because the only thing is that I'm just really lazy, so I won't get up and get them, but that's the only way I can stop myself from finishing the bag.
Dwayne?
I like Twizzlers. So Twizzlers are great because they're easy, they're not messy. But then also my students will ask me for them. My scholars will ask me for them every time they see me eating them. And at the beginning portion of the year, I'll be super hard nosed, like, no, y'all can't have none. No, get your own. But towards the middle and the end of the year, I'll start giving out, little Twizzlers here and there. And they're like, oh, Mr. Reed loves us. And it's like, yeah, I do love you.
That's perfect.
I love it.
Well, thank you all so much. It was such a pleasure to speak with all of you. You can go to the NTTBF website to purchase books, as well as bookshop.org/shop/NTTBF. So follow us on social media, #NTTBF22. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.